Namaste children. Till now we have studied the refraction through spherical lenses. Now today we are going to see the refraction of light through a glass prism. Now what is a glass prism? It is transparent optical medium which is having two non-parallel surfaces inclined at an angle. Non-parallel surfaces are inclined is called as angle of prism, and it is designated by capital A. Whenever a light ray is passing through it, then after refraction it is out of the prism. When you extend the incident ray and the refracted ray through the glass prism, then at the intersection of these two extended rays, an angle will be formed which is known as angle of deviation, and it is designated by capital D. Unlike glass slab, the prism will undergo. Now what is dispersion? Dispersion is nothing but splitting of white light into a band of 7 colors. Light is moving in air medium, moves with the same speed, but when you are passing that same white light through a glass prism, it forms a band of colors which is known as spectrum. So splitting of white light to form a band of 7 colors, that is spectrum, is known as the phenomenon of dispersion. The main cause of dispersion is varying of speed of light when it is passing through the glass prism. Suppose when we are sending a single color of light, it is called as monochromatic light. For example, sodium, only one color, that is yellow. But when you are considering sunlight, it is polychromatic. A white light is a mixture of 7 colors. This was investigated by Sir Isaac Newton. Now whenever this white light is passing through it, it refracts and splits, forms a band of colors which is known as spectrum, and the phenomenon of splitting of white light into 7 colors, that is VGR, is known as dispersion of light. So the main cause of dispersion is the varying of speed of different colors of white light. When you compare, the red light will have more speed, and when the red color light will have more speed rather than the violet color will be having least speed because of different wavelengths. So light speed will be more because its wavelength is more, whereas violet light is the speed is less, whereas its wavelength is less. So this is the main cause for the dispersion of light through a glass prism. Then this was proved by Sir Isaac Newton that white color contain 7 colors. Now when you are passing a monochromatic light, it incident on this phase and passing through the glass prism. This is the refracted ray. After refraction comes out as an emergent ray. Then if you consider single light and this ray is extended inside the glass slab, same way emergent ray also if you extend, the two rays where they are intersecting, they forms an angle which is known as angle of deviation, and these are the non-parallel surfaces which are inclined with an angle in between them. This angle is known as angle of prism. Now suppose when you are sending polychromatic light, that is white light is incidenting on the one surface of the prism, then it refracts inside the prism and comes out as a band of 7 colors which are known as VGR based on their wavelength. The least wavelength is violet light, for example 380 nanometer, and red light is having 780 nanometer. 780 the range is a red light wavelength. So which is having large wavelength will move with high speed, whereas the color which is having least wavelength will move with less speed. This speed variation in the medium is responsible for the formation of a spectrum and for the dispersion of light in case of glass prism. So when the speed is less, the bending will be more, whereas when the wavelength is large, the color moves with high speed in the medium, whereas when the wavelength is least, the speed also will be least. When the speed is least, it bends more towards the base of the prism. That is, bending of color depends upon its speed and wavelength. So the most bending color is violet, whereas the least bending color is red. White light is a composition of 7 colors, so it is called as polychromatic light. Chroma means color. So the violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange and red based on the increasing order of wavelength splitting. Monochromatic light means light which is consisting of only single color or single wavelength, for example sodium yellow color. Then polychromatic light contains more than 2 colors and different wavelengths. Example, sunlight. Now Sir Isaac Newton has proved by this recombination experiment there is a combination of 7 colors, that is VGR. Newton found that when an inverted prism is placed in the path of the dispersed light, then after passing through the second prism they recombine and again forms white light. So he was the first who obtained spectrum of sunlight by using a glass prism and tried to split the spectrum of white light. Another similar prism, but he could not color. So he repeated the experiment using second prism in inverted position with respect to the first prism, and he allowed all the colors of the spectrum to pass through the second prism and found that again a white light emerged out of the second prism, and by this he proved that white light is a combination of 7 colors. Rainbow is the natural example where the dispersion takes place. So in nature, dispersion occurs in droplet which is suspended in the atmosphere. It acts as a prism. Formation is the natural example for the dispersion in nature. Now in this, rainbow passes through a water droplet which are suspended in the atmosphere. Then this dispersion takes place and the rainbow will be suspended. Water droplets in the atmosphere acts as small prisms. So how this rainbow will be formed? The water droplet act like a small prism and they refract and disperse the incident sunlight, then reflect internally. Total internal reflection takes place and finally refract it again. When it comes out of the raindrop, due to dispersion of light and internal reflection, different colors reaches the observer's eye, and red color appears on the top, whereas violet at the bottom of the rainbow. This rainbow always forms opposite to the sun. So sun should be behind the observer. So in this picture, when you observe position A, refraction and dispersion takes place. At position B, total internal reflection takes place, and at C also refraction and dispersion takes place. Refraction, then total internal reflection, and finally refraction all together leads to the phenomenon of dispersion and the formation of rainbow. This is meant by atmospheric refraction. Early in the morning, that is sunset time and sunrise time, the sun appears orangish red, whereas during afternoon, sun's color will be white. This is due to the phenomenon of atmospheric refraction. What is meant by atmospheric refraction? Because atmosphere will have so many layers. When you are standing on the surface, when you compare the optical densities from the surface of the earth till the vacuum, the densities will differ. So the density of the air differs. So the optical difference in the optical density, this density of air and temperature leads to the difference in the optical densities in the layers of the atmosphere. So at every point, the electromagnetic waves, that is the sun rays, when they are passing in a straight line, due to the variation of these densities, optical densities or refractive indices, they undergo multiple refractions. So undergoes multiple refractions instead of coming, so there will be a lateral shift. Due to this, what are other natural phenomena occur in the nature due to light, sunlight, that is atmospheric refraction. So due to atmospheric refraction, the sun appears to be oval in shape during sunset and during sunrise. Why this is happening? What is the reason? Because of atmospheric refraction. Actually, during sunset and sunrise, the sun will be at the horizon. So the light rays coming from the sun, these travel the upper rays of the sun and lower edge of the sun bend unequally while passing through the atmosphere. As a result of this phenomenon, the sun appears oval or flattened during sunset and sunrise. But in the afternoon, sun overhead, so the light rays passes straight, normally perpendicularly towards the surface of the earth, so there won't be any refraction. That is why sun appears circular. Next, the planets will not be, seems to be twinkle. This is also due to the reason of atmospheric refraction. When the observer is standing on the surface of the earth, why stars appears to be twinkle, whereas planets do not twinkle? When you compare, planets are nearer when compared to the stars to the earth. So they are the huge bodies which are close to the Earth's surface. So the intensity of light what we are receiving from the planets also will be large, and each point on the huge body acts as a small star, and all the twinkling effect will be merged together and nullified, becomes zero. So planets do not twinkle, but they seems to be like a glowing fireballs. Stars appears to be twinkling. Now, because this is due to atmospheric, the phenomenon is atmospheric refraction. In case of refraction of glass slab, we have studied about a lateral shift. Same way, the appearance of star position to the observer who is observing from the Earth's surface is not true. It is an apparent position. Now this is due to atmospheric refraction. When you observe, the atmosphere will have different layers, and the different layers will be possessing different temperatures and different densities. Because of the high densities nearer to the surface of the earth, when the light is passing from the sun through the upper layers, there are rarer media coming nearer to the earth, the density will be increasing, then slowly it bends towards the normal. Continuously this refraction, it undergoes refraction at different layers due to different optical densities. So due to this multiple refractions from rarer to denser medium, the apparent position of the star will be observed and not the actual position, because the temperature, the moving of this atmosphere, the particles continuously, and temperature variation, the density variation, stars at higher position will be seems to be twinkling. So the deviating of the path from the actual path leading to the lateral shift, and it also keeps on changing due to the fluctuations of temperature and densities. So because of that fluctuations, the brightness of the intensity of light also goes on fluctuating, and due to the phenomenon of atmospheric refraction, we will be seeing the apparent position rather than the real position. That is the reason why stars appears to be twinkling for an observer. Next, why we can see before sunrise, 2 minutes before only sun appears, and after sunset also we can able to see the sun after 2 minutes. That means a day will be delayed for us, where daylight will be received by us 4 more minutes extra each day, because sun rising is 2 minutes before, setting is 2 minutes delay. This is also due to the phenomenon of atmospheric refraction. When sun is in the horizon region, the rays from the upper position of the sun and the lower position of the sun, when they are reaching, there goes multiple refractions, and the sun appears in its apparent position rather than absolute, that is actual position. due to this apparent position of the sun and due to atmospheric refraction phenomenon, sunset will be delayed 2 minutes and sunrise will be in advance 2 minutes we can see. Phenomenon is scattering of light. This scattering of light is depends upon the intensity of light. Intensity of light, according to Rayleigh-Berg, the intensity of light is directly proportional to 1 by lambda to the power of 4. So, light passes from one medium to another medium, that is from air to water or air to glass. The particles will absorb the light into the medium in a particular direction. This phenomenon is known as scattering of light. The density of scattered light depends upon the size of the particle and wavelength of the light. Shorter the wavelength and higher the frequency of scattering of the line and its intersection with the particle. So the wavier the line, the more are the chances of intersecting with the particle. On the other hand, chances of intersecting with the particle will be less when it is having longer wavelengths. So whenever it is having longer wavelength, it will have low frequency and they are straighter and chances of colliding with the particles are less because they will be moving with a high speed. So the bending of multicolored light can be seen in the afternoon due to the refraction and total internal reflection of light. Because of the wavelengths of the sunlight forms different colors in different directions. This is nothing but scattering of light. In simple means, intensity of scattering of light is 1 by lambda to the power of 4, which is known as Rayleigh-Berg's theorem. Words, spreading of light in all directions is nothing but scattering of light. Atmosphere will contain so many particles. Whenever it is passing through atmosphere, due to refractions and total internal reflections which are taking place due to the difference in the refractive or optical densities of atmosphere and temperature variations, the white light will be splitting into different colors and moving in different directions. In that, whichever is having largest wavelength will possesses high speed and it will be having less chance of intersecting and colliding with the particles of the medium. So its frequency will be less, whereas violet, which is having least wavelength, its speed will be less and it will have chance of, not only violet, blue color also have chance of hitting the particles or colliding with the particles of the air, and it will be moving slowly in the atmosphere since its speed is less. So high frequency it will be having and scatters more. Whichever will be scattering more, that will be caught by the eye of the observer. So according to Rayleigh-Berg scattering theory, the intensity of scattering is directly proportional to 1 by lambda to the power of 4. So shorter wavelength, that means shorter wavelength is inversely proportional to the 4th power of the wavelength of radiation. The probability of scattering, this is nothing but the probability of scattering will be give rise to for shorter wavelength, and it is inversely proportional to the fourth power of the wavelength of radiation. In simple words, intensity of scattering of white light is directly proportional to 1 by lambda to the power of 4. Basing on this scattering of light, some phenomena will be seen in the nature. For example, Tyndall effect. This Tyndall effect is also because of scattering of light. When a beam of light is striking and the minute particle of the Earth's atmosphere, the suspended particles of dust and molecules of air, the path beam become visible. This phenomenon of scattering of light by the colloidal particles gives rise to Tyndall effect. It can be observed when white light is passing through a canopy or of a dense forest, or the color of a scattered light depends upon the size of the scattering particles. Very fine particles scatter mainly blue color, which is having shorter wavelength, and large size particle scatter the long wavelength light, that is red light, and very large particles enough particles scatter the white light as it is the sky appear. So basing on this difference in between the intensity of scattering and the wavelengths, different colors. Why the color of the clear sky will be blue? Because blue color will have wavelength mixed with violet, indigo, other two colors also. And gases and particles of the Earth's atmosphere scatter sunlight in all directions. Blue light is scattered more than the other colors because it travels as shorter wavelength and smaller waves. This is why we see blue sky most of the time, and the non-blue wavelengths are still mixed together, unscattered by the atmosphere, so they still appear white. So the scattered violet and blue light dominates the sky, making it appear to be blue. Next wavelength will have largest scattering, which will scatter more, that will be caught by the eye of human being. Basing on the same phenomenon only, during sunrise and sunset, the color of the sun appears to be reddish orange. The position of the sun is very far away from the observer. So the sunlight travels longer distance through the atmosphere of the earth before reaching our eyes. So scattering of blue light is more than scattering of red light. As a result of this, more red light enters our eye rather than the blue color. Hence, during sunset and sunrise, sun appears to be red, and in the afternoon, sunrays will fall overhead and travels in straight line and less distance. So it appears there won't be any scattering. All the light will be scattering equally and merges together, and the scattering effect will be almost nullified. So sun will appear white in color. Then danger signals are given in red color, because the scattering, all the colors will scatter much more than that of red color. So red color suffering less scattering will reach our eye and remains persistent in the eye. So whenever the illuminates the signal, light falls on the signals, all colors are scattered much more than that of red color. So the red color is suffering least scattering, remains confined around signal. So whichever illuminates the signal and illuminates the signal significantly. So the danger signals are being given, can be seen from far off distance also. That is the reason danger signals are given red color. And sun appears to the astronaut black, no color, because there is no atmosphere in the vacuum, so there is no scattering taking place. So sun appears so for the sky appears dark to the astronaut since there is no atmosphere in the space. There won't be any scattering. So for an astronaut, sky appears dark.